everyone. You might have noticed there's a lot strange about this image. I'm going on a cruise with my family. We are cruising in Alaska. We are not on the cruise, obviously. Can you imagine if I had, I'm gonna say a bathroom this big on a cruise? It's the day before we leave for the cruise, and it's actually evening time. We're about to head out to dinner. We had a fun day out and about, came back, took a little bit of a power nap, and then finished reading the first part of Words of Radiance, which is the second installment in the Stormlight Archives. I have to fix up my makeup to go back out to dinner. We are going to do that, and while we're doing that, we're going to talk about the first 180-ish pages of this book. Now, if you are not familiar, these books are super duper long. This one's, I think, like 1,300 pages, so 180 pages isn't even like a quarter of this book's length, okay? We're like halfway through a quarter of this book's length, which would be an eighth if you're following along at home. So the first part is incredibly exposition dense, which I wasn't really expecting. We got so much world building in the first book, but this isn't world building as much as it's like exposition, like I said. I don't know how to explain it. Also, full spoilers. Full spoilers. I'm just gonna be talking about the book in depth. So if you have not read it and you want to read it, this probably isn't the video for you, just as a heads up. I was not expecting to be getting so much information. I thought this book would be a lot more plot. But the information is like supporting the plot, right? So we're finding out a lot about like what Jasna knows about like what Shadesmere, is that right? Also, I'm reading the physical book, so I get the names wrong sometimes. Sorry about that. I'm probably going to separate it out by the characters because I feel like that's the easiest way for me to remember what happens is like by thinking about what happened to each individual character up to this point in the book. So Miss Shallan and Jasna were starting to travel back to the Shattered Plains so that they could start helping protect against the desolation, which Dalinar is also doing. So you're kind of looking forward to them meeting up and joining forces, except Shallan has met her Spren companion. What would you call them? I'm sure they have a name for them eventually. As of now, we haven't been given a name for like what they just generally call the Spren that bond with the humans. We've met Pattern. I'm enjoying him a lot. He's really goofy. I'm very curious to know like what the cryptics actually are and what Shallan's powers actually are because it seems really interesting. It actually feels like she might end up being one of the more powerful ones of our Knights Radiant, or I don't know if they're gonna have tiers like that. Maybe they'll all be equally as powerful in different ways, but it certainly seems like because they're talking about how all the other Spren are almost like afraid of the cryptics, it kind of feels like that she's gonna have some really cool stuff that she's gonna be able to do, so I'm excited about that. Also, I wish you guys could see, like I wish I had another device here that I could use to take a photo of where my phone is balanced right now. I've like jammed it into a mirror that's right here. I don't know how to describe what I've pulled off here, but I'm pretty proud of it actually. We've met Pattern now, and Shallan is kind of getting to know Pattern and getting to know how Pattern can help her and what their bond is gonna be. And we loosely met Jasna's Spren, but then Jasna said, she was like, oh, or I think it's, somebody told me it's Yasna. Sorry, Yasna. Said that her Spren doesn't like to be seen because what they've done is forbidden. And Syl has said something similar now. She's Kaladin's Spren. And she also said that she was forbidden to do what she did, but she did it anyway. But we don't really understand like what that is. Like go off and bond with the humans. That's all we really know from their perspective. So anyway, then a bunch of like assassins or something come on board the ship that her and Yasna are sailing on. And from Shallan's perspective, they successfully killed Yasna. So Shallan thinks Yasna is dead. Now, the way I worded that would probably lead you to understand that I don't believe Yasna is dead. She's not dead. Come on now. I wasn't born yesterday. Her body disappeared. And then in the interlude things that are at the start of the chapter, which are from Yasna's mom's journal, she references Yasna having died. So one can presume that Shallan makes it to the Shattered Plains and tells them that Yasna is dead, but I don't think she actually is. I think she's going to show back up. But who knows? Maybe he's doing that to make you believe she's going to come back around and it turns out she really did die and she'll just never show back up. That'd be interesting. Anyway, Shallan was able to essentially soul cast the entire boat they were on into water to escape. And then this thing called a sandfid, which is like a big like turtle shell, like almost like jellyfish-like creature that's giant. It's hard to describe, you guys. They're very rare, and it seems that one kind of saved her life, so that's cool. Leads you further to believe that she's going to end up being important and that the universe is kind of trying to keep her alive, you know? I think this book is mostly about her. That's what I've been told by my friends. I'm gonna put my lipstick on because I don't know how I'm gonna talk while putting lipstick on. Give me 2 seconds. So she makes it to shore in this shipwreck, and she's pretty sure that everybody else has died. And she stumbles upon these slavers and basically gets them to take her to the Shattered Plains. I like her character growth. She seems to really be coming out of her shell. She stopped being so timid, which is interesting because I feel like she's only ever been described as timid. Like, I feel like a lot of her actions have been very bold through the series. And so whenever they tell us that she's timid, it almost kind of annoys me because, like, she isn't timid, but she views herself as timid, clearly. She's trying to, like, turn a new leaf on that and kind of, like, demands that they call themselves merchants, but they're slavers, take her to the Shattered Plains. And that's where her story leads off. So I'm excited to read more about her because I think it's gonna be cool. I think she's gonna really dig into Yasna's research and see what she can figure out on her own. And I'm kind of excited for that for her. I think that's going to be fun to read. But I also, like I said, I do believe that Yasna isn't dead, and I think she's going to show up eventually. Yasna and Shallan had this whole conversation about this, like, city called, I'm just going off my memory, you guys. It's called, like, Ubithu or something, or Urbith, I don't remember. And I feel like what Yasna is going to end up doing is going there and, like, finding it, and then, like, returning to everybody else when she's actually found it, partially to keep herself safe because clearly assassins are out for her, and partially just to kind of search unburdened for this place that she's been looking for a long time. So I think she's going to show back up probably near the end of the book, having done that. If I had to guess, if I had to predict when she's going to come back around, it would be then. You know, my ears kind of hurt. I don't know if I'm going to wear earrings tonight, you guys. No, these hurt really bad. I'm not wearing earrings tonight. I'm pretty much back to being ready then, so I'm going to change into my clothes and then we'll keep talking about Words of Radiance. I just realized I have genuinely like 4 or 5 minutes to film the rest of this before I have to leave the hotel, so rapid fire round. The other 2 characters that we read about were Kaladin and then Dalinar and Adolin. He's always kind of treated as like one unit, so we read about them kind of in tandem. So for Kaladin, we've mostly been watching him train up the bridgemen to be trying to like guard Dalinar and also learning more about his powers. He's the only one that they know of right now that is like what the Knights Radiant used to be. I've been enjoying his story a lot more in this book than I did in the last one. If you watched my last video, then you know I kind of felt like Kaladin's storyline in the last book was really repetitive. And so it's just kind of annoying to read because I felt like the chapters always followed the same structure and it was really easy to predict what was happening. A few things occasionally surprised me, but otherwise it's like, I was never really surprised. I could always kind of predict where the chapters was going. And it was annoying, but I am finding him significantly more enjoyable in this book. I've been loving his storyline. I think it's really cool to watch him learn what his powers are. And the guy who betrayed him just showed up to the Shattered Plains. So I'm very interested to see how all of this plays out now. Because the shard blade that Amaram has is supposed to be Kaladin's. So I'm very excited to read the next part because I want to know what's happening with that. And then there's Dalinar and Adolin. Now the main thing to note here is that Dalinar knows that the Everstorm is coming in like 60 something days now. And he's starting to kind of open up to people about it and tell them about it. And he's mentioned wanting to reform the Knights Radiant in front of Kaladin, and Syl got Kaladin to promise that he's gonna tell Dalinar about his powers. So I am very curious to like see all of these characters kind of converge and start to interact. I will say actually out of all these chapters, I found Dalinar's to be the most draggy in this section, which is interesting because I loved him and Adolin in the first book. But I just think we're learning so much cool stuff with Kaladin and Shallan now that Dalinar's, especially because we aren't really watching him interact with Adolin that much, it's just not as appealing to me. There's a lot of political intrigue, so there definitely is interesting stuff in there. But if you watch my last video, then you'll know the political intrigue isn't as intriguing to me as some of the interpersonal relationships. So because we aren't getting as much of that with Dalinar, for me personally, it's a little bit less fun. But watching him kind of try and navigate some of the politics of this region is super, super fascinating. I wish I had time to dive into it more, but I do have to leave right now, actually, right this second, right this very moment. So I will just say I'm excited to keep reading and I'll let you guys know how I feel.
2 hours later.
Hello. I'm having some ice cream and reading more. I just broke into the interludes in between the first part and the second part, and I just had to film a little clip because I'm literally like 2 pages into this, but we were reading, at least in this interlude, from the perspective of the Parshendi shard bearer. Her name is, I'm gonna butcher this, Ishonai. I'm sure that's not right. Once again, he has created a character, he being Brandon Sanderson, that I think is so cool, that goes in the fucking interludes. I'm gonna murder this man. I'm like 2 pages into her thing and I'm like, I already know an interlude's not gonna be enough. I want to read everything about her. I want to know all about the Parshendi civilization. Why does he do this to me? Why does he put these things in the interludes? And Seth isn't even in these interludes, so I don't even get like an update on Seth yet. I'm upset. Anyway, I'm gonna keep reading.
You might be wondering, Meredith, how did you manage to make a cruise cabin look exactly like your house? It's just the dedication to the craft, you guys. We gotta have consistency. I'm just kidding, I'm not on the cruise anymore. I grossly overestimated how much time I was going to have to read on this vacation. I'm still going to use the B-roll that I got to go in between the shots because it's beautiful and I want you to enjoy it the way that I did. I finished part 2. We're about this far in now. So I did read most of that part on the cruise, I just didn't finish it, so I didn't do an update. And there's so much to unpack. Truly so much more is happening in this book than happened in the first one. Let's get started with the interludes. Now, I've already expressed my frustration with the fact that Brandon Sanderson keeps introducing these amazing, wonderful, super interesting characters that only exist in the interludes. So with the last book, it was Seth. And every time we got to the interludes, I was so excited to learn what was going on with Seth. And I cared about him more than I cared about like any of the main characters that I was reading most of the book about. That has happened again. I believe her name's Ishonai. I'm probably butchering that. I just refuse to look up the name pronunciations because I refuse to risk spoilers. I'm sorry. You guys are going to have to deal with the fact that I mispronounce these because for all I know, I'd Google Ishonai and it would just say like, oh yeah, she dies in book 3, just like at the top. Like, I don't know. So I'm not risking it. And you guys are just going to have to deal with that. But Ishonai is one of the Parshendi, who the Alethi are at war with. So the entire last book, we were reading almost exclusively from the human perspective. But there's this species called the Parshmen or Parshendi, and they're more these like stone-like humanoid beings. The Parshmen are very docile and they're used often as servants and slaves amongst the humans, whereas the Parshendi have a society of their own where they assassinated the king of the Alethi and kind of started this big war with the Alethi on the Shattered Plains. The big reveal in this interlude is that the Parshendi killed Gavilar because he was going to do something dangerous. They haven't explained what yet, but I think I've kind of figured it out. Maybe not. Who knows with these books? I could be so far off base it's not even funny, but that's half the fun of making these videos, you know? Anyway, at the end of the last book, we found out that the Parshmen are actually the Voidbringers, and that they come across as very docile, but then when these desolations come back around, they all rise up and fight the humans. And that's why they end up being so dangerous, because the humans end up trusting them in the meantime. So the big reveal of this section is that the Parshendi have forsaken their god or gods. They do not want to serve them anymore. Essentially, they don't want to do the desolations anymore, is what it seems like. And so they've kind of abandoned, at least the Parshendi specifically seem to have abandoned their god or gods. It seems like multiple gods is how they're referring to it, but we'll kind of get to what some of the Spren developments have been that make me wonder if there really are multiple gods or if there's just one god that's split into a bunch of different Spren. I have very mixed feelings about these developments for many reasons. Ultimately, I think it's super cool and interesting. I find Ishonai to be the most interesting plotline that we've been introduced to, and I certainly want to know more about the Parshendi's culture and their powers and where they come from and what their goals are. Like, I want to learn all of that. I want to know all of that. At the same time, I'm open to being wrong about this because I haven't read the whole entire book yet, but I really enjoyed doing it in parts last time because then I could see where I was wrong, and you guys seem to really enjoy that too, so that's why I'm doing that again. So don't come for me for saying this stuff before I finish the book. But I'm partially kind of disappointed because I feel like the big reveal from the last book was that the whole goal of the Voidbringers and Odium was to lull the humans into submission almost, realizing that humans are our own worst enemies and that given enough time, we would ensure our own destruction as a society. We would be so busy infighting that they could come around and destroy us, and we would have no central army because there's no central like country, there's no unity among the humans. We're all fighting each other, so there's no like unified army to fight them back. So it was this kind of long con almost from the Voidbringers and from Odium to lull the humans into submission so that they could then come back and just wipe them all out in one go. and rule the earth, which is that seemingly their ultimate goal. The implication after you learn all of that is that the Parshendi have been awoken the way the Voidbringers used to be. That's why they attacked Gavilar, because he was trying to form the Knights Radiant and they wanted to stop him, and now they're kind of prepping for this Everstorm, for this final desolation. Finding out that that's not the case is a massive reveal. That is a huge plot twist, but it wasn't introduced as such. It was just, you turn the page, you start reading about Ashonai, and within her own mind, we just get told this plot twist. And I think just with the care that he's taken with all the plot twists and how cool the different ways that some of them were revealed throughout the first book, it just felt so like bleh, like what a big twist. And it's just kind of like, here you go. The Parshendi actually aren't the bad guys. And you're like, what? That's huge. Like, why am I just finding out about this in the most like blasé way almost? That's why it was disappointing, because even though it is a cool plot twist, it wasn't delivered like it was a cool plot twist. It was delivered like it was just another chapter, and so that was kind of disappointing. But then again, going back to the reveal from the past book, I also find it kind of disappointing that it then seems like this time between Everstorms isn't entirely related to a calculated plot by the Voidbringers, which makes it kind of less fun for me too. The implication seems to be that the reason that they actually went after Gavilar is because maybe bringing back the Knights Radiant also brought back the Voidbringers. If Gavilar succeeded in bringing back the Knights Radiant, then he would also succeed in bringing back the Voidbringers and actually bring the Everstorm down upon the Earth. That's the implication, right? Now that is me reading in between the lines, so I don't know if that's actually what has happened. I guess we'll find out as the book goes. But that's why I'm disappointed, because there was something so cool to me about the idea of a multi-millennia plot to take down the human race that involved just allowing us to infight for that amount of time. And I feel a sense of loss in not really getting to explore that anymore, because it seems like that's not really the reason. It seems like part of the reason why it took so long for Odium to come back around is because the Parshendi turned their back on him, and so he had no Voidbringers. And that it wasn't until they started bringing back the Knights Radiant that also brought back the Voidbringers. However, that does open us up to a little bit of a cool, like, we brought this on ourselves, like we were trying to do the right thing, but we did the wrong thing instead, who knows? And it's a chicken or an egg thing, because Syl and Pattern, who are the two Spren that we really get to interact with a lot up to now, have both really hinted at not really being allowed to bond with the humans, and that it being really forbidden, and that they were supposed to kind of just allow the humans to die. So maybe the Everstorm was going to happen anyway. Maybe they aren't bringing back the Voidbringers. I don't know. But all of that to say, I feel like it should have been introduced in a much more impactful way. I don't know. I'm curious to see how it turns out. I still have hope. I mean, obviously he writes great books, and so I'm sure I will still enjoy whatever direction we're heading, but I am kind of disappointed that we no longer seem to be discussing the whole like human infighting as like a war tactic, because that's fascinating, right? So I'm kind of disappointed that it seems like we're not going to be doing that much. But maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. That was really the big takeaway from the interludes. There were some other characters, but I gotta be honest with you, at this point, I almost don't even remember who they were or what they did. So then we get into the actual chunk. So this section was essentially the same people as the last one was, except we got Adolin instead of Dalinar, although their stories are pretty intertwined, so we read about both of them when we read one of them. But Shallan and Kaladin were the other two. Shallan is mostly on a journey from this like frozen tundra area, I forget what it's called, to the Shattered Plains to try and continue Yasna's research and to let her family know that she's died, and possibly to follow through on her engagement to Adolin. Kaladin is just doing his job as King of the Guard and finding out more about his Knights Radiant Surge Binder powers. And Adolin is mostly focused on the political side of things. He started dueling people from other war camps, trying to steal their shard plates and shard blades. I mean, not steal them, he's trying to win them in duels. All in an effort to help his dad unify everybody while this countdown is going down to what they presume is going to be the Everstorm. In this section, we find out a lot about kind of what the Spren are, which is interesting because in the first section, we got this whole speech from Yasna about what Shadesmar is. Shadesmar. But then with these kind of offhand comments that the Spren make, we find out so much more about them than Yasna said. For example, we have textual evidence. This is a conversation between Syl and Kaladin. He thinks you're a god, you shouldn't encourage him. Why not? I am a god. He turned his head, looking at her flatly as she sat on his shoulder. Syl, what? I am. She grinned and held up her fingers as if pinching something very small. A little piece of one. Very, very little. You have permission to bow to me now. I love her. She's so fun. But then later, Pattern and Shallan are talking about it. And Pattern says, my kind, those who were unbonded, we retreated and many kept our minds. Even still, it is hard to think apart from my kind unless we have a person. So that's what you get out of it, Shallan said, untangling her hair with her fingers. Symbiosis. I get access to surge binding. You get thought. Pattern also mentions in this sections that the Knights Radiant killed their Spren back in the day, so that's interesting. I'm curious to see where that goes. Especially because later in this section, Kaladin has a dream where the Stormfather, we don't have any in-depth description at this point as to how the gods actually work and operate. Some being that's within the storm, that may or may not be the Almighty, but the Almighty said he was dead, who fucking knows, told Kaladin that he was going to end up killing Syl because it's just how it is. And Kaladin was like, help me not to do that, I don't want to do that. And he basically was like, it's just how it is, you're going to. From this, we can gather exactly what they said. They just told us all this stuff, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. I'm just saying they explicitly told us, so I don't think I need to explain it more in depth. Also, we're finding out about the possible existence of evil Spren. That's not what they've been calling them, but Spren that come from more of the evil god than the Almighty. And those being the Spren that maybe cause the Voidbringers, and those might be returning to Earth, and that's some of the sign that this last Desolation Everstorm is going to happen. Again, it's not really clear where the chicken and the egg are. Are the bad Spren coming because the good Spren are binding with the humans, or did the good Spren start binding with the humans because the bad Spren were showing up? I don't know. Moving to Shallan and her kind of big section in this section. That was intelligent. Good job, Meredith. So Shallan has a Shardblade. That's a plot twist. The only thing that I find interesting up to now is it's clear that she used the Shardblade to kill her mother. We don't know why. It's also clear that for a while she was living at home, the Shardblade was in like a safe somewhere and she was not bonded to it. So for her to now be bonded to it to where she could summon it, and then to think to herself, it saved your life again, presuming that the reason that she used it before, possibly on her mother, was to save her own life. So did she summon it then? In which case, why was it able to sit in a safe? Because the whole thing with the Shardblades is that they materialize when you use them. So we're either finding out that the Shardblades have a central location that they sit, like a home base, that they get summoned from when they're being used, or that Shallan at some point may be unbonded and rebonded with the Shardblade, or something really weird is going on with her Shardblade that caused all of this to be possible. We'll find out. I also still, like, Yasna's not dead. We're all in agreement on that, right? Urithiru, I think I'm saying that right. That's the city of the Knights Radiant. It's like this mythical city, and the only thing we really know about it is that nobody knows where it actually is, and you can't walk to it. That's the only other thing that they've said. Now, Ishonai very heavily implies that the Shattered Plains themselves are the remnants, the relics, the ruins, if you will, of the destroyed city of Urithiru. That has not been explicitly stated. So that seems to be what Brandon Sanderson is implying and foreshadowing. However, as I've now referenced multiple times, this man has a tendency to lead us astray. So I think there's something deeper going on here. I have a few theories as to what it could be. I do think that on some level the city did get destroyed, but I do think that there's maybe the possibility, especially because Urithiru is like almost a symmetrical word, that within the actual like plateaus there is almost an underground city that's still there, that's still intact. I don't know if anybody lives there, but that there might be some kind of city like within the actual plateaus, like an underground city that maybe used to be a city that was above ground and underground. Maybe you had to have a Shardblade to cut to it, and that's why they say you can't walk to it. I don't know. That's kind of far-fetched. I don't know if that's what he's actually going to do with it. I feel like there's more to it. I feel like it's not just that the city got destroyed and now that's the Shattered Plains. I feel like there's something else somewhere else that was a part of the city that they're going to be able to find, and he's trying to lead us astray in that by implying that the city got completely destroyed and it's not there anymore, and that's what the Shattered Plains are. Next, let's talk about Kaladin. I wrote here, Kaladin and Adelin's dick sizing is cracking me up just fuck already. And I think I pretty much made my point there. I don't think I have to talk that much more about that. No, I'm finding find Kaladin a lot more fun to read in this book. He's got these like magical, mystical powers. As far as they know, he's like the only one that has them. Everybody that knows about it is kind of worshiping him as a result. He feels really weird about it. He doesn't want to really let a bunch of people know because he keeps saying the Light Eyes have taken everything from me. If they find out about this, they'll find a way to take this from me too. So essentially, due to his trauma, he does not want to let Dalinar, I almost just combined him and Adolin into one person again and said Dadalin. Because of his trauma and his past, he does not want to let Dalinar know about his powers. He does not really want to like embrace his role as the Knights Radiant dude. The whole thing is just really throwing him off and he's very hesitant. And he's like trying really hard to build this army out of this like ragtag group of very beaten down bridgemen and trying to protect Dalinar and Adolin and the king and all of them at the same time. And so there's a lot going on with him. There's always a lot happening. He's emotionally conflicted a lot of the time and it makes it somewhat difficult to predict his behavior, and that's what makes it fun. I'm very curious to see where his story goes. I'm enjoying him a lot. Also, the whole Amaram thing, again, don't know if I'm saying that right, not gonna Google it, don't want spoilers. I was expecting to read more about that in this section, so I was a little disappointed that all we really got was a part where Kaladin was telling Dalinar about it. Dalinar basically is like, I can't just take your word for it, you need some other kind of evidence. My theory is that at some point, Amaram's Shard Blade and Plate are going to call themselves to Kaladin in a way because they view him as their true owner, is my theory. I'm wondering if there's going to be some kind of altercation between them and Amaram's going to try and kill him with them and he's not going to be able to because they were supposed to be Kaladin's, and then he's going to be able to kind of like take them over from Amaram and kill him in the moment. That's kind of my theory right now. We'll see if that turns out that way. And yeah, I'm just enjoying the pissing match he's having with Adolin because I think it's really funny. And kind of true to their ages, I don't know why I was surprised at some point in this book it references Kaladin and Adolin are around the same age, which is like 20. I didn't realize they were that young. I don't know how I didn't realize that, but that makes it kind of fun too to imagine these like boys having this big pissing match over their daddy, Dalinar. It's very fun and further supports my theory from the end of the last book that Dalinar is going to become somewhat of a surrogate father to Kaladin. We're seeing that kind of already. I think it's going to continue developing as we go. I'm also really enjoying Shallan in her journey, kind of learning how to lie, and Pattern almost like encouraging her to lie in different situations and like take different forms. It's very fun, especially because we're supposed to see the Knights Radiant as the good guys and we associate lying as a negative. So I'm very curious to see how this becomes a part of the codes. Like if she's supposed to be a part of this whole like knighthood thing, why is lying okay for her to do? And are there like situations where it's okay, situations where it's not? Is that why people are afraid of Spren like Pattern? Who knows? We'll see. It's all very fascinating. Sidious is still so boring. I'm sorry, but he is. He's realistic, unfortunately. There are people whose like sole goal is to conquer and they don't care how much suffering they cause as a result and they see the world as a horrible place and they're just like adding to that horror. I get that those people exist. And so Sidious is a realistic villain, but he's such a boring villain. He's so uninteresting. We got some of his perspective in this book, and his perspective is basically just like, yeah, the world's a horrible place, so I'm gonna keep adding to those horrors, baby, because it's the only thing that brings me joy. I just want to conquer. I just want to fight. I just want to rule the world. And I get it. I get that people like that exist. I don't find it interesting. I don't. I like complicated villains. I want a villain that in a different light isn't a villain. And that's not Sidious right now. There's no lens that you can look at Sidious in which he even thinks he's doing the right thing. He doesn't think he's doing the right thing. He like knows he's the villain. He knows he's causing suffering. He just doesn't care. And so unless he has a big like change of heart at some point, I just don't foresee myself finding him interesting at any point. I don't want to read about someone whose sole motivation is conquering and they're just evil for the sake of being evil. We have enough of that in the news. I'm so excited that we got a showdown between Kaladin and Seth. I know it was just a small one and I know Kaladin's not at full power yet, but oh my god, it supports my theory from my last video that they are almost like opposites within this world and that we're gonna see them showing down a lot. I want that. I want more of that. I want emotional struggles between them. I want physical battles between them. I want them to become unlikely friends and then become enemies again and then become unlikely friends again. I just want a lot of conflict and interaction to happen between these two characters because I think it would be really interesting given how they've been presented as opposites. Kaladin held his own in the battle, but he's not as strong as Seth is. Seth's had a lot more time with his powers. However, Syl is convinced that Seth does not have a bond with a Spren and that there's something weird about his shard blade. So there's something like weird going on with him. Is he bonded to an evil Spren? I don't know. But Seth is really upset that Kaladin has the same powers as him, and he says something about they named me truthless, where it seems as though he was maybe cast out of a society at some point for being a liar, and that Kaladin is proof that he was right about whatever it was. That's cool. I hope we learn more about that. I don't have that much more to say other than it's intriguing and it makes me want to read more of the book, which I will be doing. Those are my thoughts on the second part. We're about 460 pages in. The book's 1,300 pages total, so we got a lot more to cover, a lot more to read. I'll see you in a bit once I've read the next part. You're in my window. I don't want to talk about it. I just read the second interlude. And I have a bone to pick with you, Brandon Sanderson. In my last update, I talked about how annoyed I was that I felt like the big plot twist at the end of the first book, not I felt like, objectively the big plot twist at the end of the first book is that the Voidbringers are the Parshmen. So then they talk about how there's these Parshmen that get awakened and then they're not docile anymore and they like work for Odium. So then you assume that the Parshendi are the Voidbringers. And that's why they killed King Gavilar. And then there was this like massive plot twist that was not introduced as a big plot twist at all in this book, in the first interludes, where we find out that the Parshendi actually aren't the bad guys. They don't work for Odium. They want peace and they want to work with the humans. And while I was a little bit annoyed with the shift, I was growing to appreciate the idea that maybe the Parshendi and the humans were going to work together against whichever other Parshmen woke up and ended up working for Odium. No, because the second interlude plot twist is that the Parshendi are the Voidbringers and they do end up working for Odium. I'm like destroying my set behind me because I'm like that upset, okay? Pause. Life lesson for authors out there. You don't get to deploy the same plot twist twice. The Parshendi are the Voidbringers. No, they're not. Yes, they are. Which is it? Do they work for Odium or not? Don't stop being wishy-washy. I spent 300 pages making my peace with this direction only for you to take it back in the other direction. You're not allowed to do that. I mean, he's allowed to write whatever he wants, but I'm really genuinely actually very irritated by that because it genuinely feels like deploying the same plot twist twice. They are the Voidbringers. No, they are not. Yes, they are the Voidbringers. Which the fuck is it? Pick a lane. That is all. Hello. We're in my kitchen. I know there's a big shadow. We're not that high production around here, okay? I'm still figuring out lighting in general. I need to make dinner. I just finished part 3 of Words of Radiance and I'm hungry. It's like 6:25 p.m. So I'm gonna make dinner, but I wanna talk about the book while I make dinner because I wanna read more after dinner because shit is going down. I'm yelling timber. So I'm gonna turn the oven on, hang on. I'm not a professional cook by any stretch of the imagination, nor am I a good cook really. So I'm not going to be walking you guys through my steps. This is purely functional, okay? I need to cook, I need to record this. We're doing it at the same time. Multitasking. Making steak and broccoli and actually onion left over from bringing it to my friend's house. I brought way too much. So it's a weird combination of things, but it'll work, it'll be fine. So Miss Shalon arrives at the Shattered Plains. And she's got like a million things to do. And her part of this mainly centers around her trying to woo Adolin and like become his wife because they're just like a casual betrothed right now. Casual betrothed, you know how it is. And also to kind of figure out what's going on with these ghost bloods. Tried to have Yasna killed. Per what we understand in the book, they did have Yasna killed. I do not believe that Yasna is dead. But every character right now believes that Yasna is dead. So let's start with Sean and Adolin because they're the ones I actually care about the most right now. I'm not gonna lie, I'm about to show my true colors to you right now. I was enjoying this book. I was having a great time. I was having a ball. I was enjoying a lot about the book and I can understand why it's so many people's like favorite book ever. I could totally get it, right? It's a very, very well written book. However, I fundamentally am a romance girly. And so the romance has not been that heavy. We've gotten Dalinar and Navani up to this point, but otherwise we haven't really had any romance plots at all, right? I'm truly embarrassed how much more I'm enjoying this book now that Adolin and Shalon are having a little flirtation. They're actually into each other, so it's not just her manipulating him. There is like feelings there. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. What can I say? Fundamentally, to my core, I am a romance reader first. Hang on, I got tongs somewhere around this bitch.
But I'm a romance reader at heart. And it's not that I can't enjoy other genres, because obviously I do. And I would just like to stress as much as I possibly can that I was enjoying this book a lot. But I'm just enjoying it so much more now that we have a little romance plot going on, and I'm going to be so pissed. I need a bigger plate. I'm going to be so pissed if it doesn't go anywhere, or if like one of them dies or something and it's just meant to like rile the other one up so that they have some like magical, I don't know. I'm so afraid that there's going to be some kind of twist and they're not going to end up madly in love. And I'm going to be heartbroken. I've resigned myself to the fact that I'm not going to get any full sex scenes. But we got a little bit of steam at the beginning of the book with like Dalinar and Navani making out. Or maybe it was at the end of the last book. I don't remember. But I remember thinking there was like a makeout scene between them. And I remember thinking like, that was steamy. Okay. And I originally was like, I hate like Fade to the Ocean. Like give me full smut. If there's not full smut in here, then I don't care. And that is how I feel about Dalinar and Navani. Like don't imply that they boned. Show me they boned, you know? But because Adeline and Shallan are getting like a full like romance plot where we're like seeing them flirt and we're seeing them get to know each other and we're seeing them start to support each other. And it's like this whole cute thing. I'm okay. I'm okay with just an implication. I'll survive. It's still not ideal. I still would prefer if they boned on screen. But that's because I'm a menace. And if Brandon Sanderson does not want to be a degenerate like me, that is fine. I guess I have no choice but to respect it and to find some fan fiction later, which I'm positive exists. Our steak is prepped and it's going to sit over here for a while now until we're ready to cook it. I was really happy with the early chapters. Well, I'm happy with all of the chapters with Shallan, honestly. I think she's been a lot of fun. I hope that she would be fun in this book because this book is supposed to be like about her mostly. Like this is the book that centers on her. And I've been really enjoying seeing her explore her new lie powers and like interact with Pattern because Pattern is still so fun and watching what he's able to do is so cool. And as like he figures out what he's able to do, it's like very fun to watch. It's been really cool. I think the coolest part for me was watching her shapeshift for the first time. I think that was really fun. So I brought way too much onion to my friend's house. You guys have no idea. I really overdid it. It was embarrassing. He laughed at me. I'm only saying that because I know he's watching this because he loves the series. He made fun of me relentlessly for the amount of onion I brought to his house. I'll never live it down. As much as I love Syl and Kaladin, I just think that Pattern, how do I explain this? Syl is very fun as a character and I love her so much. I don't at all want to make it sound like I don't love her. But I do think Pattern is my favorite of the Spren just because I think he's so cool and his powers are so cool. And his bond with Shallan and like what they're able to do together is so, dare I say it, cool. Really intelligent commentary you're getting from me here. Make sure you like and subscribe. Subscribe to hear me call more characters cool. It's very interesting because it's very existential in a way. His love of lies and his like interpretation of human language and just him pointing out like how often we speak in idioms and all that kind of stuff. And he just calls it all lies. It's really funny and very like endearing. Every time he goes, delicious lie. It just like cracks me up. So I think he's very funny and I'm enjoying him a lot. I'm enjoying him and Shallan's bond. And her like discovering more about the Ghostbloods is also very cool. And like all the stuff they've discovered now that she's trying to do her own research without Yasna. It's fun to watch her like try to deceive these people and kind of stumble through being a con woman. Don't ever do this. Don't ever do this. Okay. Don't ever do that. Use scissors. Okay. Oh, I'll get a second pan out. My goodness. Cooking so much work. I feel like we rarely get to experience this in media. You guys can probably come up with a million examples and comment all of them. But I feel like it's rare in media to find somebody like learning how to be a criminal in a way, but like by themselves, not being taught by someone else. Because I feel like that interaction always is someone like teaching someone else and being like, let me take you under my wing, kid. Let me show you how to be a con man. I don't know why I turned into like a 1920s movie detective there. Let me show you how to be a con man. I feel like that's usually when we see people learning how to like be a criminal. And so it's kind of fun to watch Shallan like figure it out by herself. Not that she's trying to be a criminal, but she is trying to like scam the Ghostbloods and like infiltrate their ranks. And I also appreciate in a way her experiencing real consequences for her actions. And I know that sounds crazy because the boat sank with Yasna on it, supposedly, allegedly. Anyway, up until now, she has grown to be more and more bold and more brash in her actions and like trying more extreme things and having more faith in herself and her ability to handle situations. And it's really fun to watch. However, she has yet to really do anything that causes any major thing to happen that's bad, if that makes sense. Like, she kills Tin at the end of the last section, which is the con woman that she was traveling with. That kind of seemed like she was going to be the, let me teach you how to be a criminal lady. But she brought this hired like coachman carriage thing to one of her oh my God, one of her meetings with the Ghost Bloods. I'm just going to finish seasoning this. Hang on. Because she could draw from memory, she like told them that. And she was like, oh wait, they might kill me. And so she hid behind an illusion of a rock and sent the coachman without her. And then he ended up getting killed along with his parshmen, and they burned the carriage. So presumably they thought she was inside and they think she's dead. And she felt really guilty. She felt really shaken up. And I feel like that's good for her. Like, I feel like she needs those kinds of restraint. She was getting really, really brash and bold with her plans and all that. So it's nice to see her kind of experience some consequences for her actions and guilt. Because I feel like that's going to rein her in a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Do I want to add anything else to that? Oh. All right, the cooking gets a lot simpler now, so I should be able to focus more on talking. The only other thing I wanted to say about Shallan is on the relationship with her and Adeline. Obviously, that's all I care about now. I am genuinely concerned because I've been around the block once or twice, okay? I know my way around a romance. I know the signs. I am genuinely concerned that this is going to turn into a love triangle with Kaladin, Adeline, and Shallan. I'm basing that off of a single line in the book, which might be kind of bold. Do you have any idea how common it is there to be a love triangle where two of the characters are really smitten with each other and the other two characters kind of hate each other, but then they like grow to have this mutual respect of each other, and then that grows into feelings? Kaladin and Shallan had this like very bizarre run-in where she stole his boots when she was like pretending to be a Hornita princess. Do you remember that? I don't even know if I mentioned that in this video. There's so much that happens in this book. And so when they meet each other for the first time, they end up like really yelling at each other. And Kaladin is like, I hate her. She represents everything nasty about the light eyes, like blah, 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 whatever. And I had a moment where I was like, what if? But then I was like, no, he wouldn't do that to me. He's just going to make it a relationship between Shallan and Adeline, and I'm not going to have to deal with the emotional turmoil of a love triangle. Except, unfortunately, there was a moment in the carriage when Kaladin noticed a sadness in Shallan's eyes that Adeline was completely oblivious to. And so I make my boldest claim yet. Shallan and Kaladin are the real couple, and that hurts me to say, and it hurts me to feel, and yet I am sure. Man, he's really gonna do that, isn't he? Shallan ends up with Kaladin. Okay, well, we'll just see if I'm right about that. I'm cutting in here after dinner. I haven't actually started the interludes yet. I was sitting down to read and I was thinking a little bit more. In the time that has passed since I filmed that little section, okay, I have gotten angrier and angrier about that when they're in the carriage. Kaladin notices that there is a sadness in Shallan's eyes that Adeline completely misses. Does this man think I was born fucking yesterday? Does this man think I was raised in a barn? Does this man think I didn't go to elementary school? I'm mad because it's so obvious. And that makes me think maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't feel like I am. I'll make a fool out of myself if I am, but not only do I feel like he showed his whole hand with that one line, he showed his whole ass, he showed his dick and balls, I might say. There's gonna be a love triangle, and Shallan is gonna end up with Kaladin. And I just know that now. I just know that. Okay, it's always the man that sees the sadness in her eyes. That is the man she ends up with, no matter how much the other man makes sense. That's how this stuff always works. So I'm upset because I feel like I'm not gonna get to enjoy the rest of the romance because I just know what's gonna happen. And it's not like he's gonna write smut, because it's the other thing that would carry me through. Oh my God. So that's frustrating because it would be fun to watch them have a three-way, but I don't think he's gonna do that. That fucking coward. He would never dare. Most we're gonna get is a makeout. I just, in the middle of a war, because all I need is a little cutesy romance just sprinkled in there. And now I've got this stupid love triangle that's so obvious. I'm gonna riot. I'm gonna end up on the news. The Everstorm is coming, Brandon. We don't have time for this. Don't you know how these things work? That man noticed sadness in your eyes. That is the man you end up with. Just pick him. Enough of this. The Voidbringers are coming. We have like 30 days. There's no time for a love triangle. If you see me on the news, then I am correct and the love triangle exists. That's all I'm saying. I feel like Nicole Raffi. I should have like pictures on the wall to like point with my tongs while I'm cooking. Next we can move on to, oh, that's hot enough. Monsieur Adeline. The noise cancellation appears to be working, so I'm hoping that's not too loud. Adeline is really shaken up by the whole thing with the assassin in white, and he takes his training a lot more serious, but he's really freaked out about the idea of having to face him again. And it's really nice. I like being inside of his head because he's so like hopeful and positive, and even though he's kind of like freaked out about this whole thing, he's very confident in his abilities dueling. And at one point he challenges this guy to a duel, and the only way he can get him to agree is to agree to face like basically 2 people at once, but he's not specific enough. So by the time the duel actually rolls around, they bring 4 shard bearers to face him. He tries his best and he almost defeats them all, but they really get him cornered, so then he's allowed to bring 2 people in to help, per the rules of the duel, apparently. So Renarin runs out there with his fucking shard blade with no plate on, and one of the 4 guys goes over to like fake fight him basically to keep him away from the other 3 and Adeline, and they threaten to kill Renarin if Adeline yields. So Adeline basically resigns himself that he's either going to be very injured or die in this duel, and then Kaladin jumps over the fence to save them both. And he does. And honestly, I wanted him to expose his Surge Binder powers in front of everybody and like fuck all those shard bearers up and like be granted plate and stuff. But instead, at the end, when they like are granted some kind of like boon from the king, Adeline challenges Sidious, which was the plan all along. And then Kaladin out of nowhere is like, and I challenge Amaram because he killed a bunch of my friends and branded me a slave and stole my shard plate all these years ago. And then he gets arrested for insulting a lord. We'll get to Kaladin in a minute, but we'll stick with Adeline. So Adeline ends up not being able to duel Sidious in a moment, which means Sidious accepts the challenge, but says he'll fight him in a year. So by the time that goes down, it won't matter anymore. So Kaladin basically fucked the whole plan up by challenging Amaram at the same time. But the battle was really cool. The battle was a really, really cool thing to read. I was enjoying it a lot. I especially enjoyed reading about how Kaladin fought all the shard bearers because he would have had to be really creative in order to be able to do that. And he didn't use, like he used his powers a little bit, but not in an obvious way. He didn't reveal them. That's smoking a lot. If my fire alarm goes off, I apologize. Let me not start a grease fire. Okay. Last in this section, we have Kaladin. Kaladin spends most of this section learning to feel joy again, and I love that for him. He's discovering his Windrunner powers, and he ends up figuring out how to lash himself the way Seth does. So I'm so excited for the next showdown, because now they're on more even footing. I mean, Seth is still more used to it, but presumably by the time they face each other again, Brandon's going to make them equally as powerful, and we're going to see a real face-off. And I'm so excited for that, especially given how interesting and engaging all the war scenes are and the battle scenes and the duel scenes. He's very good at writing combat, so I'm so, like, I just cannot wait. I cannot wait for Kaladin and Seth to face off. It's going to be so fun. And then at the end, there's the whole duel thing that happened that I already talked about with Adeline. Here's the thing about that, okay? I'm proud of Kaladin. I mean, obviously I was a little bit mad at him because he kind of fucked the whole plan up. But we have like 500 pages left of book. So that needed to be filled with something. So their plan couldn't just work. You know what I'm saying? More needs to happen. So I'm not that mad the plan got fucked because I'm sure it'll all work out in the end. Or it'll all go to shit and the next book will fix it. Or it'll all go to shit there too, and then the book after that will fix it. Or it'll all go to shit there too, and maybe it gets fixed in books 5. Ugh, we're timing this perfectly. I'm a chef. I'm preparing a 5-star meal. It's all gonna come out at the same time. That's crazy. I never pull that off. The other thing I wanted to say is that at the end of the duel, Kaladin catches a shard blade, and there's like this screaming that both him and the bearer hear. My theory, because not everybody fighting in that duel is themselves a shard bearer or like owns the shard plate or blade they're using. My 2 theories are either A, just in general because Kaladin is one of the Knights Radiant, Syl protected him or something, I don't know, something like that. It's getting juicy. Oh my god. Okay, hang on. Whoa! All right. Hey, yeah, that's plenty cooked. All right. I should have gotten the plate out beforehand. Wait. I'm pulling it off. Come on. Ah, there we go. Yay, steak's done. And now that rests until the veggies are done. And we've done it. So yeah, that brings us up to where I've read to. I'm about to read the next set of interludes, and then I'll eat dinner and I'll read the next part. I don't know if I'll finish it tonight. It's like 7 probably by now, or it's gonna be 7. I guess that's always sort of true. It's always going to be a certain time at some point. Enjoying it a ton. Just reiterating, I love this one way more than I like. The first one was good. Don't get me wrong. Please don't come for me. Please don't dox me. Please don't murder me in my sleep. I did enjoy the first one, but I'm liking this one way better. I think it's way better. So yeah, I will see you guys later on tonight. I just finished the interludes for this section. What the fuck? What is going on? It has gone so crazy, so fast. So we met this little girl named Lift, and I'm kind of obsessed with her. I hope she sticks around. I don't know if she will or not. She's an edge dancer. I don't know if that's right. She's got this little spren, and he's like a plant. He kind of grows, and she ends up saving her friend, and then he becomes emperor. Just go with it. We don't have time to unpack that. The Everstorm is coming. We've got to get moving. Then we got a chapter with Seth. Finally. 850 pages into this book. And we finally got a Seth chapter. Seth is sitting on a tower in Urithiru. Don't know if I'm saying that right. So I guess that confirms that it's a real place that still exists. It also does confirm that my theory about it being within the plateaus on the Shattered Plains was so wrong. So wrong. I guess they just teleport there. That's what they meant by you don't walk there. Feels like something I should have figured out. It feels a little more obvious than it's inside the plateaus. I might have tried a little bit too hard to outsmart him on that one. But we also found out that it seems like the reason Seth was banished from his people was because he said the Voidbringers were coming, and they told him he was crazy. And he's been like following this whole oath thing for years and basically realized he's been killing people for nothing. What a realization. What a moment. I'm obsessed with him. I want to read so much more about him. I still cannot believe that I have to make it to book 5 before it's the book that's focused on him. Literally, I think max 2-3 pages we've gotten from his perspective within this book. And it is the most interesting stuff. It just objectively is. He's the best character. He's not the best person. And I don't defend his actions, but character-wise, he is the best. And you cannot convince me otherwise. He's the most interesting. And then we read a Shonai, and here's the thing. I'm just so sad about the direction the Parshendi chapters went. I am. Now she's just evil, and she's clearly being manipulated by something, and the form is taking control, and oh, my finger was in that. What am I, a boomer? It's sad, and it's disappointing. But, you know, in Brandon Sanderson, we trust. I'm sure I'm wrong about half my predictions. I'm sure the end of this book will throw me through a loop. And I'm sure that something interesting will happen with the Parshendi eventually. But right now, it's just like she's on an evil arc. And I don't know if you guys can tell, but I just don't like characters that are just evil. If they're just evil and their whole point is to be evil and all they are is evil and their only thoughts are evil, it's not interesting to me. Ashonai seems to have been taken over by the storm form. Her voice is screaming within her, but she's not listening to it. She's clearly being kind of controlled and manipulated by someone, we can presume Odium. And it's just not fun. It's not interesting because there's no conflict within her. She's just ignoring the screaming and being manipulated. And so there's no like internal emotional conflict. I want to see someone who's conflicted over the amount of murder they would have to do to save their own people. Like, that's interesting. What constitutes making us the bad guys? How many of the Alethi do they kill before they really become evil? Like, that's the shit that's interesting. If it's just like she's deep down a good person but she's being controlled by something evil, like, ugh, I don't care. But like I said, in Brandon Sanderson we trust. He's a really good author, so I'm sure the end of this book will be crazy. I've got about 450-ish pages left of the book itself. 200 pages-ish until the end of the next section. I will for sure finish the next section tonight. I don't know if I'll finish the whole book. It's 9 p.m. right now. We shall see. I will let you guys know. Hello. It's the next day. It's now Sunday. I did not end up finishing the part last night. I got kind of distracted and then it got late and I just wanted to go to bed. Especially once Kaladin and Shallan entered the chasms, because I fucking told you guys. I fucking told you, and I maintain every point I made in my little rant. The Everstorm is upon us. The Voidbringers are coming and we do not have time for this fucking bullshit. Obviously, I want her to end up with Kaladin now because it seems like a way better match. But it's just, we're going to have to do a whole song and dance to get there. And obviously, she's going to end up with Kaladin because he saw the sadness in her eyes and not Adeline. And that's how you know. But we're going to have to do a whole fucking song and dance to get there. I'm also so mad about Syl. I know that she's not fully dead. It's already been very heavily foreshadowed that Kaladin's going to be able to save her and bring her back. If that's not the case, I'm not continuing the series. Like, if Syl isn't in the later books, I'm not reading them out of spite. It's in protest. I don't agree with that choice. But like I said, it's already been heavily foreshadowed that he's going to be able to do something. I'm definitely going to read the interludes right now. And then all I'll have is part 5 in the epilogue, which I think is about 200 pages total. I don't really have much more to say. Oh, one of Sidious's men was the one who yanked the bridge, and they were trying to kill Dalinar. Didn't work. That's probably important to mention. I will see you either after the interludes or after part 5 if I decide the interludes aren't interesting enough to get their own little insert. See you later.
Let's get started, bitches. I finished the book, honestly, like 2 days ago. I've been sitting on my thoughts, sleeping on my thoughts, and now I'm ready to share my thoughts. So I hope you're ready to listen. I thought it was really good. I actually enjoyed this one a lot better than I enjoyed the first one. The first one to me was this amazing feat of world building and creativity, and just everything about it was so cool. But there were so many large stretches of the book where it didn't really feel like anything happened per se. With this book, you could not turn a page without something happening, to the point where it made it hard to make the video in the opposite direction of how I felt before, where it's like I want to do an update, but Kaladin was basically just being a bridgeman for this entire section, so what am I supposed to say about him? And then I end up repeating myself a bunch. But with this book, it was like, how on earth am I supposed to remember everything I'm supposed to talk about? I mean, look at the amount of notes that I took. Look at this. I would actually be really curious to see this up against my copy of the first book. Give me a second. This is insane. This is the first one. This is the second one. Okay, second one's on top. Look at the difference between the amount of notes that I took. Can you see that? Can you see how much more notes I have in the second book than the first one? I did my best to remember everything, and I'm sure I missed a bunch. As I was doing in the other sections, I think it's easiest if we go in order of character. Let's start with Kaladin. I have mixed feelings. On one hand, I'm so frustrated because if you've seen my first video, you know, in the first book, they send Kaladin on the most classic hero's journey there is. And the whole time I'm like, it's so obvious that he's on a hero's journey. So it's so obvious where this is going to end up. And for the first like half of this book, I felt like he was actually a lot more emotionally unpredictable, and that made it a lot more fun to read his scenes because I actually didn't know what he was going to do. I truly, honestly did not know if he was going to agree that the king needed to be killed or something, right? I don't know that I've mentioned that plot point up to here in the video, but there was a subplot going on where one of the other bridgemen really wanted the king killed for personal reasons and because he thinks it's what's best for the kingdom or whatever. And Kaladin agrees for a while, and this is what causes the rift between him and Syl. Like, he broke his oath because he was going to do something unhonorable, and it was already kind of putting space between them. But from that point on, Kaladin went on another hero's journey. We got a second one. We got a repeat. I was like, are you kidding me? He's going on a second hero's journey? He's got to rediscover his honor where he discovered it before? And I was a little bit frustrated with it. However, the battle scene between him and Seth, literally the best scene in this whole entire book. A sky fight between these two incredible warriors that's this emotionally charged. Sign me the fuck up every single time. That and his pining over Shallan really saved his section. And my issue with it is the same that my issue was in the first book, which is it's so obvious what he's going to end up doing. It's obvious that he has to realize that saving the king's life is the honorable thing to do, and then that he's going to go save the king's life despite the fact that he's super injured and be willing to give his life to save the king. And that was going to reinstate his honor, and Syl was going to come back. I could have told you that. I could have told you that like 2 sections ago. I don't think I did for the video, but trust me, the opinion was there. I remember that when I did my part 4 recap, I didn't really talk that much about Shallan and Kaladin in the chasms because I just kind of wanted to keep reading. I didn't want to spend that much time talking about it, truthfully. I will say, watching them bond, watching them walk around the chasms, them cuddling during the high storm, I was into it. And I am Team Kaladin in the love triangle. I do want her to end up with Kaladin. And not just because I know that she does, because I'll reiterate, he was the one who noticed the sadness. That's how you know. So I know it's going to be him, but I am kind of rooting for him anyway. Like, Brandon Sanderson is really laying it on thick that Kaladin is the better man for her than Adeline. And I can live with that. So getting to watch them like cuddle and bond, and then having Kaladin kind of like pine after Shallan and like consider her to be so beautiful and like to have so much respect for her and be like low-key hating Adeline, but then having to admit that he like thinks Adeline's a really good guy. And of course, the big showdown with Seth that I thought was really cool. So all of that redeemed his parts, and I could forgive the fact that Brandon Sanderson sent this man on a second hero's journey. But I swear to God, if there is another Kaladin hero's journey in the third book in this series, I don't even know what to say at that point. It's just, is this going to be like an every book occurrence? He just like goes on the hero's journey over and over and over and over again. Stop forcing him to rediscover his purpose and honor in life. He needs to stop losing his way. Next, let's talk about Dalinar. Wowza. Dalinar bonding with the Stormfather, did not see that one coming. Truly did not see that one coming. And I'm so excited to see what that makes his powers. I've been informed that the next book centers around him. So I'm excited to read Dalinar's because I want to know so badly what his powers are now that he's bonded with the Stormfather. I also really want to know what the fuck happened to his wife and why he can't remember her. That's been just hinted at for like 2 straight books. I, as the reader, am chomping at the bit to understand why that is, because that's such a unique plot point that just keeps getting mentioned over and over again. Next up is Adeline. For the first time since I started reading this series, we have a lot to unpack about Adeline. I have theories, as always. So when this book ends, as of right now, Adeline is not himself a Knights Radiant. He also murders Sidious in cold blood. Thank fuck. I was so tired of that guy. To me, implies that we're about to get a little bit of an Adeline sad boy arc. I don't know if he's going to go on a full villain arc. I feel like that's excessive, but I do feel like we're going to get a lot of guilt. I feel like he's going to be jealous and not really understand like why he's not a part of the Knights Radiant, since his dad, his brother, and his fiance are all members of this incredible club. Why does he not get to be a member of the club? That, combined with what I think will be a whole lot of guilt over him being the one that murdered Sidious, he probably will have to do a few nefarious things to cover up the fact that he was the one who murdered Sidious. I think it will end up with him confessing it at the very least to his dad. I do think that we are going to get a lot of father-son relations in this next book with both of his sons, and the journeys with them I think are going to be very different. With Renarin, I think it's going to be about Dalinar learning to accept that his son doesn't have the ailments he used to have because the Stormlight healed him, and so he's got to learn how to allow Renarin to become maybe a warrior, or maybe he stays like not really a warrior, but still like Dalinar is going to have to learn to like let Renarin grow up a little bit. And then I think with Adeline, it's like Adeline's always been this happy-go-lucky, almost like perfect son, and I think he's going to become not that, and we're gonna have to watch Dalinar process that and learn how to deal with this like new Adeline that's carrying this guilt that Dalinar doesn't understand. That, combined with the fact that his fiance, casual betrothed, if you will, is potentially in love with another man. That man being like the most honorable man on planet Earth, declared by the Spren. This is clearly all going to cause massive turmoil within Adeline and make his behavior that much more unhinged. And at some point in this next book, my biggest prediction is that we are going to get a very heartfelt father-son scene between him and Dalinar, where Dalinar forgives him for murdering Sidious. And I, for one, cannot fucking wait. Sign me the fuck up for this next book. I'm so excited. What do you mean he bonded with the Stormfather? What do you mean his son's a murderer, but we hate the man he killed? What do you mean he doesn't remember his dead wife? Because he asked some fancy spirit for something, we don't know what, and in return, part of what she did is take away his memory of his dead wife. Cannot wait, cannot wait, cannot wait. Genuinely might start reading it tonight. Speaking of Renarin, what a sleeper agent. I wasn't expecting him to be a Radiant, truthfully. That did kind of throw me at the end. And he can see the future and he seems really horrified. So I imagine we're going to find out a lot more about why that is and why he's so horrified by the future and like what he sees that's so scary to him. I'm happy Syl's not permanently dead, but I could have told you that. I've already talked about this, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but just in resolution, I feel like the direction the Parshendi story took was just so disappointing to me. I wanted so much more from that, and I didn't get it. I wanted all the things I've already kind of broken down from it, and I didn't get those things, and that makes me disappointed, especially with that being such a big plot twist at the end of the last book. But I did have a friend tell me that that comment was interesting, and that he wasn't going to say more than that because he didn't want to spoil things for me. So leads me to wonder if that turns all the way back around, and maybe eventually they do kind of make nice with the Parshendi and everybody's trying to fight Odium. I also want to talk about that king. What is his name? What is that man's name? Does anybody know? Do you know who I'm talking about? You know who I'm talking about. Yell it at the screen so I can hear you through space and time. Taravangian. I'm sure that's not right, but you know, he's the king of fucking, I don't know. He's the king of someplace, okay? And he uses Seth. He has Seth's O Stone, and he's using Seth to kind of tear down all these different societies. And he's trying to become king of everything. That is his goal. But this is supposedly with the intention of saving the world, right? He wants to reunite everybody, and his way of uniting everybody is by causing a ton of strife and chaos so that he can become king of everyone, so he can forcibly unite everybody so they can fight the Voidbringers. And he succeeds in conquering Ja Kaved through all of these, I'm sure I didn't say that right either, but through all of these kind of like backroom means, and through assassinating people and causing a whole throne war and all of that. That's also where Shallan is from. Now, this is what the fuck I am talking about. This is what I am asking for. Because here is a man with conflict, and that conflict is discussed in the most fascinating way. So this man also visits the Night Watcher being that made Dalinar forget his wife, and we don't know what he traded for that. This guy wakes up some mornings really, really stupid, wakes up other mornings super intelligent, and apparently it's perfectly even on a bell curve. But there was a random day where he woke up so intelligent that he wrote something that they're calling the diagram, which was essentially an almost completely accurate prediction of the next few years and certain actions that Taravangian could take to topple all these different kingdoms and become king of everything in order to save them from the Voidbringers. He's very utilitarian. The ends justify the means. Any action that he takes to save the human race as a whole from the Voidbringers is a justified action to him. So he is causing all of this pain. He is the one using the assassin in white to murder all of these different leaders of different governments, to cause all of this global chaos so that he can go around and conquer every kingdom, all in the name of uniting everybody to eventually be able to fight the Voidbringers. His overarching guiding principle is that the ends justify the means, but we watch him emotionally struggle with the guilt of the amount of people that he's murdered and the amount of pain that he's caused. This is what I live for. This is why I read. This is the fun that we can't get in a movie because we can't get inside of the characters' heads the way we get in a book. I hope he becomes a much bigger character in the next books. I hope we get more time inside of his head. The whole intelligence thing with him is so fun. I just want to watch Brandon play around with that a little bit more. And I want to watch him have that internal emotional conflict. I want to watch him realize he's the bad guy in real time. I do. I want to see that with my own eyes. And then we have my love, my life, my everything, Seth. So we find out that Seth's people, the Shin, were protecting the Honor Blades all these years. The Honor Blades were the swords of the heralds. They were the original shard blades. The Spren learned how to mimic the shard blades, and so all other shard blades come from an active Spren bond, so all of the Knights Radiant can essentially turn their Spren into a sword. That's super fun. The other blades are dead Spren. They haven't broken down exactly how that works, if they have to be in sword form when the bond breaks, or when their human dies, or what that even means, how they end up staying a blade. But that's cool. So we got the origin of the shard blades, and they were modeled after the Honor Blades, which were the herald's blades, and those were the original of all of the different orders of the Knights Radiant. And so Seth had the Honor Blade that made him a Windrunner. Kaladin bonded with Syl and became a Windrunner of his own volition. And then the two of them had the best fight ever, and it was so cool. And it's only downhill from here as far as the battle scenes go, in my mind. And then at the end, Seth unbonds from the blade and essentially kills himself. But one of the heralds has come back. Possibly two. There might be two heralds back, actually, because there was another one that like Amaram had in a cell or something. But the other one, I forget what his name is, but he's the one that centers around like justice, apparently. And he compliments Seth on sticking to his oath all those years, despite how difficult it was for him, and in the end finding out that he was correct. So it turns out that Seth got cast from his people because he warned them that the Voidbringers were coming, and they were like, no, you're a liar, and they like donned him truthless or whatever, and they granted him this blade, and they gave him the oath stone or whatever, and they made him beholden to whatever master had that stone, and this was somehow all part of a punishment for him to like redeem himself or something like that. I don't quite understand all the nitty-gritty details. Again, it's my understanding that this 5th book is supposed to be about Seth, so I'm sure we don't get all those nitty-gritty details until this 5th book that hasn't come out yet, as of me filming this. The Justice Herald is like, dude, you stuck to your oath all that time, no matter how difficult it was, no matter how you were suffering, all in the name of trying to redeem yourself and trying to, like, you believed in this structure of rules, and you thought that if you followed it to a T, it would be your salvation. And that is the kind of man I am looking for in my Justice Association of the Knights Radiant. So he gifts Seth with a blade that is a spren for Seth to bond with so that he can join this order. Incredible. I still care about what's going on with him so much more than I care about basically every other character in this book. However, I wanted to see more of Seth struggling with his belief and being on the fence about whether or not what he's doing is the right thing. I wanted to watch more of that before he just kind of like realized the oath was for nothing. I wish I got to see more of that. But, you know, like, I'm not going to be that nitpicky. I think I just want more Seth. You know what I mean? So I feel like I wish I got to see more of it just because I want to read more about him and I want to know more about him. Cannot stress enough. Don't think he's a good person. Don't think he's doing good things. I feel like I have to keep repeating that. And finally, we have Miss Shallan, the center point of this book. We got her backstory, and I ate it up. I love her. I loved watching her scholarship combine with her light weaving powers. Through the duration of these books, these were considered almost separate pieces of her. It's never explicitly stated, but in the way it's written, we see her exploring her light weaving powers and we see her exploring her scholarship. And we see how the missions that she goes on with her light weaving help her discover things that relate to her scholarship, but it doesn't really feel like the two parts of her mesh until the very end, when she uses both pieces of herself to operate the Oath Gate and transport everybody to Urithiru, the fancy city in the sky. The only thing that I didn't really like about the ending of her story is how quickly everything emotionally resolved for her with her trauma from her family past. I feel like I would have preferred for snippets of that memory to have been coming back to her throughout that entire last section, instead of it being like every time she thinks about it being like, nope, I can't think about it, and just not thinking about it, and then randomly having a scene at the end of the book where she thinks about it a ton. I feel like I would have preferred to watch her remember almost bits of it every time she thinks about it, where it's like we, the reader, get the next piece of the scene, maybe with just a line or two every time she gets frozen like that. I think that would have been really cool. I think it would have been a lot more impactful than it just being essentially after all of the conflict resolves, we find out that her mom tried to kill her because she knew what she was, and that Shallan ended up killing her with her shard blade, which we now know is Pattern, who's the best. I love Pattern. I don't even have that much more to say other than I love him. I think he's so funny. I just think the Spren are so fun. Both Syl and Pattern are so goofy. And the only bummer about Dalinar bonding with the Stormfather is we're not going to get that much goofiness. But I hope Brandon Sanderson takes the energy of the relationship between the humans and the Spren, which is kind of goofy up to this point, and figures out a way to deploy that goofiness with how stern the Stormfather is. I feel like there is humor to be found in how serious the Stormfather is as a character, that there could be conversations between him and Dalinar that end up really funny, leveraging on how like strict the Stormfather is, kind of like Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you know what I'm saying? I feel like there is humor to be found there, and so I'm hoping that Brandon Sanderson leverages that humor a little bit, and it's not just every conversation between them is like so serious. And I hope we get to see them actually bond and become close, because I think that's what's fun about the relationship with the Spren. And right now it seems like the Stormfather doesn't even really like Dalinar that much and like begrudgingly accepted his words. I hope we almost get the energy of like an enemies to lovers, but like with Dalinar and the Stormfather, and they become unlikely friends. I don't know if I'm getting across what I'm hoping for, but if it ends up being the case, I'll just tell you that he did what I wanted. But back to Shallan, like I said, my only real complaint is I feel like there were cooler ways to deploy that last scene. With the emotional reveal being after all the conflict resolves, it doesn't have quite the same punch, in my opinion, opinion. And so that's why I feel like having it get revealed as she goes could have been really cool, or somehow the reveal happening while she's opening the oath gate for some reason, so that it's more like worked into the climax as opposed to being a scene that happens after. And I am looking forward to seeing how her powers continue to develop, because we got that with Kaladin. And finally, we have, of course, Yasna. I knew it. I knew it. Not only did I know she wasn't dead, but I knew she was in Shadesmar. I told you. I'm going to be very mad if I don't have a clip of me saying that I think she's in Shadesmar, because I thought that was my prevailing theory for the majority of the book, was that her soul was going to end up having been in Shadesmar for the duration of the book, and she was going to come back with all this information for everybody. If I don't have a clip of me actually saying that, I'm going to lose my mind. I swear I thought it. So not only was I right about the fact that she wasn't dead, but I was right about what was going on with her, and I am proud of that. I mean, she hasn't explicitly said that she was in Shadesmar, but like, come on. We know. All of that to say, I enjoyed the book a ton. I will for sure be reading the next one, and most likely the one after that, unless the next one somehow happens to be really terrible after these first few ones have been really good. And of course, I will read the 5th one when it comes out. So if that sounds fun to you, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!